I'm gonna turn off my video too to get the bandwidth better. But I've been working with Epic Metals again for almost 10 years now. And before I took upon the sales position for the state of Florida and Puerto Rico, I worked as an engineer up in our headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where I am originally from. Now, before I started working with Epic, I studied architectural engineering at Penn State, which kind of mimics an AE firm with the 4 options that you go into. I went into structural design, but there's also lighting, electrical design, construction management, and mechanical design. What's really cool about Epic Metals is that I'll definitely be going in depth about the architectural appeal and the structural aspects behind all of our products. And then I'm going to touch base about the construction cost savings that you could achieve with a long spanning, architecturally exposed structural steel floor and roof deck. It's a mouthful, I know. Plus, a little bit about the daylighting effects that you could achieve with like our super long overhangs and cantilevers that you could design to, as well as with our architectural screens and our sunscreens that we tapped into about 20 years ago. But a little bit more about Epic Metals is that we are the oldest metal deck manufacturer in the industry. So for almost 60 years now, we've been manufacturing steel deck. And we used to manufacture commodity N-decks and B-decks, which I am sure you are all familiar with, those corrugated profiles that you see in big box stores and in a ton of different types of construction. But with Epic, about 56 years ago, we started manufacturing something called Epicor, which is really what put Epic Metals on the map as the first long-spanning floor and roof decking system. And then we tapped into the architectural deck market and the acoustical deck market. And now we have over 50 other different profiles for those applications and even longer spanning applications too. We are still a family run, owned, and operated business. The person who started it, his 2 sons now run, operate, and manage it. And again, we do have our own detailing and estimating department, plus our own engineering department as well too. So I used to work in the engineering department. We had 2 PEs and now 2 more EITs that work underneath them. So we could help you and your structural engineers with all of your structural engineering needs in regards to a steel deck profile. Now, this is just some bragging rights for Epic. We're on the front cover of several national magazines these past few years. And this just showcases whatever you specify and design with an Epic profile, you might find yourself on the front cover of these national magazines, or at least inside some of them. But we're a big member of AIA, and we'd love to be a part of AIA Florida and all the other chapters that I get to work with, as well as on a national level too. We're always at the national convention too, and the expo there. And if you are going to be in Boston, please be sure to stop by our booth in June. We have a really great booth with a bunch of samples and things. Plus, every year at those conventions are the COAT award ceremonies. And each year we do sponsor those award ceremonies. And this is just some more bragging rights for all the projects that Epic has been on that has been awarded a COAT award. So we are a very sustainable metal deck manufacturer as well too. Now, for you to design using like a commodity deck, as you see here, as you see all the roof facets will be poking through, giving you an uncleaned, finished ceiling system look. With any of Epic's profiles, you will never see an exposed roof fastener. Also, all of our decks, again, are meant to be architecturally exposed. They could all be perforated for acoustics, and they're all meant to be long spanning. So for you to design a space similar to this and you're to utilize a commodity deck, like you see in a box store or something like that, obviously the roof fastener is exposed, giving you that unclean finished ceiling system look. And most metal deck manufacturers also manufacture these light gauge metal truss profiles too. So they try to sell you both the decking and the trusses. Since down here in Florida, all decking basically has to span about max every 5 feet on center, not this 8 foot on center, due to the high wind loads that our state has to offer. Now, Epic only manufactures the structural steel deck profiles. We don't manufacture any steel trusses or light gauge trusses or any type of superstructures other than the steel deck. So we try to reduce as many of these trusses and beams and things because you could have clear spans anywhere from 10 all the way up to 58 feet on center. We manufacture the longest spanning deck profiles in the world. Now, these deck profiles, sorry So I was just asked a question. It says, Alex, how do these roof decks and trusses get cleaned on a regular basis in a building? They typically don't get cleaned. I mean, I don't see the need. Obviously, there is dust that can accumulate up there. We've worked on we've worked on projects kind of where it had to be like a completely sterile environment, like in like a dog kennel, or also in like a food cleaning food manufacturing plant, where we utilize like stainless steel deck profiles, as well as like rust inhibited paint finishes, and so they could easily spray them. But as like any other like ceiling, like if you were to do like a drop architectural ceiling, you wouldn't really clean the deck or the ceiling the same way. I mean, you could obviously wipe it down. And then oftentimes you see trusses and things exposed in all different types of projects, which whatever you do to clean those trusses or beams or things, you do the same thing here. And the same thing with an Epic deck. It's not like stuff really gets trapped in there or anything like that. So if that answers your question, I'll keep moving on, but please feel free to keep asking any questions as I go along, and I'll try to answer them during the presentation. But regardless, we could have clear spans of our steel deck up to 58 feet. We manufacture the longest spanning deck profiles in the world. So we manufacture the strongest deck systems. It doesn't matter what type of superstructure. It could be any steel truss, give it any steel member. It could be a concrete member, a load-bearing wall, even heavy glue lamp structural members. Work with any of our profiles as you see here. So you could have 36-foot spans with this unique funky ceiling system look, which has superior acoustics, which I'll get into here shortly. We have a flush ceiling system look with this FN profile spanning the same distance. Instead of the Invista up, this concave profile, we also have the Invista down, which comes in small, medium, and large. We also have more of a bold ribbed application with our WHF series. Again, concealing all roof fasteners. And then, as I mentioned before, the Epicor deck is really what put Epic Metals on the map 50-some years ago. We have an upgraded version to our Epicor line called our Taurus deck, and it has a very similar dovetail planked ceiling system look to our Epicor line, except the Taurus deck will never have a stiffening rib, so it gives it a better architectural appeal. Furthermore, it spans further distances in lighter gauges than our Epicor line, making it more economical because you could utilize lighter gauge, which is less steel, as well as more sustainable because less steel scrap can be produced. So this Taurus deck can span 18 feet on center as a roof deck, and the Taurus 4 can span 24 feet on center as a roof decking system. And whenever we see a number after the name of our profiles, like the Taurus 4, that denotes the depth of the deck. So typically, the deeper the deck, the longer spans that you could achieve, but really it's the geometrical shapes of our profiles that make them span such far distances. So again, even in our thin, slender dovetail profiles, you will never see an exposed roof fastener. And we really try to promote our decking as an architectural and, if need be, as an acoustical ceiling system. So we could perforate all of our decks and implement acoustical bats, and we usually get a standard noise reduction coefficient of 0.95 or greater. Some of our plated profiles have a 1.10 NRC value, which is pretty much perfect absorption, though nothing's perfect. But this clearly depicts how much more of an Epic profile has of acoustical applications than a typical commodity end deck at about a 0.35 NRC value. And typically, whenever you design a gymnasium or a sports facility or big open space, like an airport or something like that, you usually have to design to an NRC value of 0.85 or greater. So a commodity acoustical deck wouldn't even work for your space. And I met with an acoustician up in Gainesville, and he mentioned me start marketing our acoustical structural steel deck panels as acoustical wall paneling systems, as you see here. And in upfront cost and a very light gauge, our deck is actually more economical than those felt acoustical panels, and they perform the same way acoustically as well too. Furthermore, if you were to put it in a gymnasium like this, a basketball or football would not damage a steel panel, as opposed to a typical felt panel could be damaged. I'm not sure if you are also familiar with these dirt wall systems too, but we do have an account with them where they don't really have a cap to their dirt walls, And if you utilize a Taurus acoustical deck in a 20 gauge, it could actually self-support the weight of itself up to 24 feet. So it could be a great ceiling system or cap to these dirt walls in any tenant fit out, which is what happened here at the Workscapes Miami and Wynwood, Florida. And they were able to conceal light fixtures and other conduits and things like that behind our decking with a superior acoustical deck inside of all of their spaces too. So it's great for tenant fit outs if you're doing anything like that as well. Also, on Miami Beach, the Boulevard at Lenox project utilized our architectural screens, as you see here, as parking garage screens, which do have an NOA, and we did tap into the screen market about 20 years, and I'll talk to you more about that later on the presentation. But this just shows you a closer look of that as well. And then the Brightline train station, which is a pretty amazing railway. It's the first private high-speed rail in the United States. And it connects basically Miami to Orlando and hopefully one day Tampa and hopefully one day the rest of Florida. But only the Miami station, which was supposed to be the most prominent at the time, only utilized the Epic decking as the roof structure. And in some of these places, it actually has some of the longest spanning deck systems in the city of Miami. And some of these profiles are spanning 27 feet, resisting the super high wind load of downtown. Now, our decking can really contour to any size shape or roof system that you need to design to too. And then working our way up the coast further, the Tanager outlets at Daytona Beach could work with our decking in some instances, showcasing you at night and then also during the day in the same project. And you could work with these big architectural open features inside of our structural steel deck profiles. And I'm not sure if we have any Gator fans here or not, but we do a ton of work up at UF, and I did help with the expansion at the Econo Center here, supplying the Taurus decking. So these are definitely like our bread and butter type projects, these big open spaces, as you see here at this gymnasium shown, greatly reducing structural members. And then the structure itself is a big workhorse, not only with a long spanning strong structural system, but also acting as your architectural and acoustical ceiling system. And we do a ton of pedestrian bridges, as you see here. In this application at the Orange County Convention Center, the decking is just being utilized as the canopy to this footbridge, but oftentimes whenever the deck works composite with concrete, it is the structure to many footbridges too. And we even work on car bridges. I'm currently bidding a job in South Miami, like this footbridge that you see here with the Taurus decking as the canopy, but also the Taurus deck as the structure to the floor or the bridge itself. And it is able to clear span from beam to beam without any temporary shoring, which made it very economically to construct. And then it does give you that clean finished look on the bottom of the bridge as well too. And again, it doesn't matter what type of superstructure that you're working with. It could be wood, concrete, steel, load-bearing wall. Epic Deck works with them all. And I used to be a big Star Wars fan, so this was a fun one to work on at the new Star Wars World Rise of Resistance. And just showing you a couple more projects, like at the entryway at the St. Joseph's Hospital, and we do a ton of portico shares and things like that. But another LEED certified job at the JetBlue Park Stadium over in Fort Myers. The architect wanted to mimic a tapestry effect look, as you see here, and running the decking in all different directions. And we do detail all of our jobs. So everything's custom, and we cut the decking specifically to these lengths to reduce the waste in the field and speed up the ease of constructability. So we're just in an outdoor ballpark, and now we're in an indoor worship center. So there's really an endless possibility of where and when you could utilize any of Epic's profiles. And it doesn't matter how big or how small the project is. We work on projects from single family residentials to projects as big as you see here at NVIDIA headquarters in Santa Clara, California. So this is over 4 acres of metal decking that we had to manufacture and supply for this project. And this is what it looks like during the construction phase. And then you could put any type of roofing on top of this roof deck. And you could see too here that they kept the triangular shape throughout their entire architecture and structure of their facility, because that's the basic shape of the computer chips that they manufacture, which I thought was pretty cool. And they're doing very well. NVIDIA has crazy stocks that keep rising and rising, and they also have an identical building down the street. So money is something that they definitely have. So I'm going to get into a little bit of a lead section here too. And I do want to let you know that Epic Metals is the most green, forward-thinking metal deck manufacturer in the industry. And about 7 years ago, I've become a LEED Green associate. So if you need help with anything for a sustainable design with a steel deck, please let me know. But again, I just want to reiterate that Epic Metals is definitely the most green, forward-thinking metal deck manufacturer in the industry. So we renovated our headquarters about 15 years ago now with a geothermal heat pump, some solar panels, and we retrofitted LED light fixtures in all of our spaces. We also implemented this solar canopy, and what's really unique about this is that we utilized our Taurus 4 XL profile, and we designed it to channel the water instead of pond the water. And when doing so, you don't need any roofing on top of this exterior canopy. So it acts as a 3-in-1 system as your roofing to shed the water. Structurally here is able to span 18 feet with 2-foot cantilevers, resisting the super high snow loads of Pittsburgh in the weight of these panels, while concealing all the roof fasteners on the underside, or the channel support fasteners here on the underside. So it's a very simple and easy canopy to design and construct, and I've done many here in Florida, and I'll go through them later. So we manufacture everything up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but we also have a manufacturing plant here in Bartow, Florida, not too far from Tampa or Orlando. Now, the reason that this plant came about is because during the residential boom of the 70s and 80s, we couldn't freight the decking down here quick enough. That's why we started manufacturing it here. And as you see, we have this lawn of solar panels, and I want to let you know that we're the first and only metal deck manufacturer to manufacture metal decking on 100% solar energy. So for the past several years, we've been something called net zero. And this would obviously be great for any jobs local to Florida to use this profile. Now, the USGBC says to reduce, reuse, recycle, and I'm going to get into one other credit first called the Innovation and Design. And I'll talk about the recycled content here shortly, but I just want to reiterate all of the reduction of materials that you could achieve while designing with a long spanning, architecturally exposed, and acoustical floor or roof deck. Now, since these decks could span anywhere from 10 all the way up to 58 feet on center, it can greatly reduce the structural supports that need to support your floor and roof decking system, as well as the amount of fasteners that need to fasten the metal decking into those structural members. Now, reducing those materials definitely saves you on the cost to purchase and erect them, but can definitely speed up your constructability too. Similarly, with the reduction of a dropped architectural and or a drop acoustical ceiling, and in turn, that could definitely increase your floor to ceiling height ratio, possibly reduce the overall height and weight of your building, and the amount of space that you need to condition throughout that as well too. So just some food for thought. Now, I do want to reiterate too that we manufacture structural steel deck profiles. All of the steel decks that you are supposed to be using in the state of Florida should be galvanized G90. So we only provide galvanized G90 steel decks for any job located in Florida. And then also, we've been in business for over 50 years. We've only been utilizing steel from the United States for the past 40 years. And all of the coils that you get from the US automatically have a 25 to 30% recycled steel content. So you automatically get that with an Epic deck. Now, we could work with any steel mill in the United States, and there's a mill in Virginia that could actually do up to a 70% recycled steel content, not a 61. If you do need a higher recycled steel content for your deck, we could definitely do that for you. The acoustical bats that we use inside of our decking systems are standard are Knopf's Eco Bats, and they are non-harmful to humans, have great recycled content. If you wanted to specify something else, recycled jean, whatever, we could definitely modify that for you as well. Now, our paint line, instead of a field paint application, saves about 97% of the hazardous air pollutants as well as organic compounds that are emitted in your space. And this graph just shows you all the HAPs and VOCs you save using Epic's paint line as opposed to field paint application. And what I see most is just our standard off-white architectural 2-grade primer paint, since most ceilings are, your standard off-white ceiling. But this is just an array of colors that we can do. You don't have to pick from these. You just send us the paint chip from PPG, Sherwin-Williams, whomever, with whichever white, whatever blue, whatever red that you want, and we will match it for your approval for both interior and exterior spaces. And I'll get into rust inhibited paint finishes here shortly as well. Because I know down here a lot of people like to design with concrete, since it's great to resist all the high wind loads as well as the corrosive environment that we live in. But I want to let you know my tenure with Epic, none of the projects that I've worked on in my territories for the state of Florida and Puerto Rico have never been affected by the hurricanes. So we manufacture the strongest steel deck profiles in the world. And with new innovations in steel design, we could greatly resist all of these high wind loads. Plus the corrosive environment that we live in, we also have so here's another question that I'm getting. It's asking if this deck can be used as a floor deck and what the allowable loads are. So absolutely, a floor deck is called a composite deck. So we manufacture all of our decks could be to composite floor decks, as well as a non-composite roof deck. If people are going to be accessing the space above the roof, obviously you can pour concrete on top of it other than service loads. But again, all of our decks can be utilized as composite floor decks, and I'm going to get into that here shortly. And the allowable loads can be to whichever you desire. It's just going to be, it will just thicken up your slab of the concrete and or shorten the spans that you could achieve. And I'll talk to you about that here shortly. We also have a sky deck option as well too. So all of our decks can be utilized as a sky deck, and we work with Solitube to achieve this. So you could really specify any size Solitube to work with our deck, and we'll cut the opening in any of our profiles. And if need be, we will put the reinforcement directly inside any of our decks if need be. So you don't have to do anything in the field except insert the Solitube. The reinforcement and the opening will already be cut into the deck for you. Another cool thing about Solitube is actually at night, they have an LED strip and it comes in different color temperatures, so you could turn them on and off at night. You just don't need the sunlight for the natural daylight during the day anymore. So this particular job at the Ball State Engineering Center, they utilized over 500 Solitubes in our Tours 4 acoustical sky deck option. Another one at the Cheyenne Botanical Garden utilizing our SW12 acoustical deck, so that's a 12-inch deep deck with our sky deck option. And this clearly depicts how well our metal decks just work next to these big glass curtain ceiling systems too. And this map just showcases over 370 LEED certified projects helped out across the states, one of which being the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, Illinois. As you see here, they wanted to preserve this U-boat, but they also wanted to preserve the existing architecture and structure of their museum. So what they did was they dredged out this front lawn here, and then they built this concrete substructure. And on top of that, they have our acoustical Epic deck. And on top of that, they have this green roof, or more like a green lawn system. So this is a composite deck. There's concrete on top of there. But again, any roofing system works with any of Epic's profiles. Now bringing you back down to the state of Florida, another LEED Platinum certified job over at the NASA's propellant facility in Cape Canaveral, utilizing our SW12. So all these pictures here that you're going to see in the slides on each profiles that I'm going to be going through are the front cover of our brochures, and you can find our brochures on our website, and I definitely sent some to AIA Florida to share with you. But if you register onto Epic's website, all of these brochures will be in PDF form for you to download. We also have CAD and Revit families for all of this, as well as other technical information on our website. So I'm going to get into our architectural screens again real quick. Is that one thing that I do want to denote is that our screens do have a NOA, and we are the first and only screen, long-spanning screen, to have an NOA with Miami-Dade. So these are our profiles, and basically what they are is they're our metal decking systems perforated to a 51% open area. So they have the same geometrical shape, they're just missing a lot of their steel, but they could still span very far distances, from 12 feet, 18 feet, 25 feet, all the way up to 27 feet as an architectural screen. And the testing that we had to do for the NAOA is obviously shear and flexure stress due to high wind loads, bearing and tear out of fasteners. So we do provide you fasteners painted the same color as whatever screen that you want us, whatever color you want us to paint the screen. And then also we had to undergo a 20-year salt spray test with this paint finish, as well as a 20-year UV damage test. So it will not corrode and the UV damage will not fade the finished painted product. Now, lastly, we did not need to do this for the NOA, but these are missile impact rated. So we launched 2x4s of wood and steel at these profiles, which we didn't have to do for the NOA, but we did it anyways. We do a lot of work in Puerto Rico, which was needed to protect some of their existing structures. Also, a lot of things are changing now too, as like mechanical screens and things like that, where it is needed to have a missile impact screen in front of them. So just going to take you through a few projects utilizing our architectural screens as utilizing our architectural screens throughout differing spaces. So it's great to utilize them for some solar heat, reducing the solar heat load effect in your outdoor spaces, changing the facade or entryway of your building. And this is actually the first automated public parking garage in the state of Florida. And they utilize a couple different profiles for our screens. They also utilize our Taurus 4 XL profile on top of their canopy here. So there is no roofing on top of there as well. So it's a pretty unique job, I feel. And it's great to utilize these screens definitely to change the facade and look and feel of your buildings. And this one's another LEED Silver certified job at the Tennis Center in Hallandale Beach, Golden Isle Tennis Center. And they utilize their EST4 profile as their portico share entryway canopy. But they also utilize their Taurus 4 roof deck structure for the structure of the roof, which is unique because this EST4 profile is basically the transparent version of the structural steel deck of the structure of the roof that it bleeds into, which I thought was really cool. And we did also finish paint this steel screen tennis ball green. Now, obviously, these screens are great to reduce the solar heat load effect on a big glass curtain wall as shown here. And whenever you look at an angle to these profiles, it gives you some privacy into the space. But whenever you look normal to these profiles, it really doesn't take away the outside space from the inside space. And this is actual footage. It's not a rendering. And since these are long spanning, it greatly reduces structural members that would also inhibit your visibility as well. Also, another application at the Southwest Miami Senior High School. They just underwent a massive renovation, utilizing our screens all over top of their school. And this one's just looking from interior to exterior from their breezeway. Similarly, at the Venesco office building as well too. They wanted some texture to their wall, but also to protect their windows and panels too, while still letting light in and things like that. And I'm a huge soccer fan, so this is a fun one to work on at the Orlando City Stadium. And I love to work on sports facilities, especially soccer. It's my favorite sport, so hopefully I get to work on the Miami Stadium. But this one was really cool too, where they utilize our architectural screens as several different applications: architectural peel, mechanical screens, and even on their moving gate structure as shown here. And another application too, we do actually a lot of work with the Braves, which I'll get into again shortly, but they actually suspended their emblem directly to our architectural screen at their practice training facility down in Venice, which I thought was cool. And the Universal Studios City Walk, I'm not sure if any of you have been there or not recently, but all of this greenery and shrubbery has now overgrown on top of our architectural screens. So it's more like a green walk at the Universal Studios City Walk. So I thought that was pretty unique. And we do a ton of mechanical screens. So at the Orlando International Airport, they basically house all of their central energy plant building with our architectural screens. And again, with the 51% open area plus the missile impact rating, it's great for that. Allowed adequate airflow in and around their units. In the second phase, they basically weave the panels in and out of one another, which I thought was unique too. So at the AC Hotel in Aventura, North Miami, I was actually valid engineered into this particular project. So the architect had originally budgeted parking garage screens for this particular area from another manufacturer, and during the budget phase is $50 per square foot, but during the bid phase, it came out to $110 per square foot. Now, what they completely omitted during the budget phase was that particular screen needed to be supported at every 1 foot on center, which really jacked up the price. And what's really economical about Epic screens is that, again, they're long spanning, but as a parking garage screen, they could span from floor slab to floor slab with no intermediate structural members, which greatly reduces price. And I was able to provide these screens in 3 different colors for about $18 per square foot, and they were able to purchase it and erect it for a total of $55 per square foot, getting them much closer to their original budget. So this is just a simulation for some inspiration. As you see, you could run them vertically, horizontally, diagonally if you wanted to. They come in really any color that you like. These simulations are on our website too, if you wanted to show a client or just play around with them to see how it would look or feel inside of the space. You guys got your own hot air balloon here. I know it's kind of cheesy and you can't really see it, but again, these simulations are on our website, and it's kind of just to show you how all this kind of looks and feels. You could also look from above as well too. Now, we've recently been seeing a lot of architects and designers utilizing our screens over top of some static signage and LED screens. So this is a fun one to work on, kind of showing you that you could utilize our screens over top of static signage, LED screens. They have an NOA and they are missile impact rated. So what it could look like also during the day and at night, and definitely protect anything behind it. All right, getting into our Epicor MSR. Now, this is the profile that's manufactured in Bartow, Florida on 100% solar energy. And the MSR stands for multi-story residential construction, since it's so economical to those types of designs, and I'll get into that here shortly, but it's a very economical floor deck for any type of structure. Now, if you're to cost comparison the MSR profile to a typical commodity composite floor deck, the upfront cost is almost the same, except this outperforms it greatly. So the difference between this and that is that the MSR comes in a 32-inch wide sheet instead of a 24-inch wide sheet. So it reduces the amount of sheets they have to actually have to erect, as well as the amount of sheets they have to side lap fasten. So it reduces those fasteners as well. Again, we also crimp the edges, as you see here on your screen. With this profile, with every other composite deck that we manufacture, we have to provide you with a channel closure, or it's called an end closure. So whenever you pour the concrete, no concrete flows to space below. So this reduces material and just speeds up the ease of constructability. And your commodity decks don't have that crimped edge either. Furthermore, this is a very thin, lightweight, long-spanning floor deck. This is the original long-spanning deck. And it's a 2-inch deep deck, and per the Steel Deck Institute, you always need at least 2 inches of topping. So you could really work with a total floor slab thickness of 4 inches total that could easily clear span 19 feet with typical residential loads, which is a nice width of a multi-story residential unit. And if the furthest that you could span is 28 feet with an 8-inch slab, so a double the thickness of the slab of concrete. So an 8-inch total slab thickness from top to bottom can span about 28 feet. This acts as the bottom rebar reinforcement too, so it saves you on rebar as well. And you could easily core drill through it as opposed to like hollow core or post tension, and has superior STC values as well too compared to all of that. And you could easily hand hoist these as opposed to other profiles in products like hollow core and post tension. And this is the only deck in the world that has a UL fire rating from wall to header as well. Every other deck you have to break and pour concrete inside of it. Now, we do have a sister company called Infinity Structures. They're in Alpharetta, Georgia. They do a bunch of work up and down the East Coast. They recently tapped in the Midwest market since their design and constructability is so quick, easy, and economical. Now, these are all the projects that they've done. These are all the hotels, senior housing, student housing, and multi-story residential. So again, they design and build all steel structures only using the Epicor MSR as their floor structure. So one of the projects that they did was the University of Central Florida Student Housing. This was a project of mine actually, but was a very similar design with the light gauge metal stud load bearing walls, but I actually supplied the decking on this. And they actually kept the MSR exposed as you see here, as well as you see here inside their hotel rooms. And we really don't promote the MSR too much as an exposed ceiling, but I do agree it does look very good in here. And they concealed all the conduit and stuff like that inside the composite deck. Now, again, getting back to Infinity Systems, this is one of their projects over at the Moxie Hotel in Denver, Colorado. And this is the skeleton of their design. So again, they design and build all steel structures, only using the MSR as their floor deck, and then only using these light gauge metal stud load bearing walls or metal stud shear walls as their superstructure. Now, obviously, they could also do their designs and build with CMU block walls too, but this is kind of what they excel at, building lightweight, mid to low rise rise buildings. And typically they have to confine to specs like Marriott's and things like that. So they suspend these channels and hang drywall beneath that to conceal the decking and the conduit above it. But again, obviously, like I showed you at the Hotel Indigo a few slides back, as well as you see here, we could definitely paint it for you. You could leave it exposed, and or you could leave it bare galvanized for more of a modern industrial look. Now, this isn't my favorite look, but I actually did work with a developer in Orlando, and we did three-story condominiums together. And he did something similar to what you see here. He left the decking exposed, and he also bare galvanized for that modern industrial look. He also polished the composite floor slab and left that as his finished flooring system. So it's definitely the cheapest way out, and he was a stickler on price, but with all of his other finishes, it actually looked really good in his three-story condos. Now, this is our mascot, Phoebe. I'm going to let you guys know that we're over halfway through the presentation. If you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to keep butting in at any time and typing them in the Q&A box. So again, this is another front page of our brochure. You get all of our brochures, CAD and Rev families on our website after you register and log in. And with our tourist deck, you have a couple different looks, but only the tourist floor and the tourist can they be composite floor decks. The 5.5 and 7 are strictly used as a non-composite roof decking system that could span further than our Taurus and Taurus 4 non-composite. So what's really unique too about the Taurus 4 composite deck is just because it is a composite deck doesn't mean it can't be an acoustical architectural ceiling on the other side. So what we do in-house, we perforate the deck, implement the acoustical bats, and then we weld a metal hot channel on top of there. So whenever you pour the concrete, no concrete flows to space below or disrupts the acoustics beneath it. And structurally, what's really awesome about this, that you can have clear spans all the way up to 32 feet as a floor decking system, which structurally is really cool. Now with the Taurus 7, you could have clear spans of 30 feet as a non-composite roof deck. And say you want to design a multi-story building, whether it's 2 stories, 20 stories, 200 stories, there's no limit on how tall you can design a structure with a composite deck. And say you wanted to design a building that was maybe 5 stories here in the state of Florida, you could utilize a Taurus 4 on all of your floor structures with any type of superstructure supporting it, steel, concrete, load-bearing walls. And you could have a continuous ceiling system at 30-foot spans, really opening up your space throughout the entire architecture of the building. And you can make it acoustical in some areas, non-acoustical in other areas, and have a rather thin plenum space as well too, with superior STC values because there's a lot of concrete in these composite decks. And it could really lighten up the load of your entire structure, reducing the thickness of all of your structural members down all the way to your foundation. And now that floor to ceiling height ratio can also be increased too. So it could definitely reduce the overall height and weight of your building and possibly the amount of space that you need to condition. So it's just some food for thought. Even though this is a structural application, it is definitely your architectural ceiling as well too. It's acoustical, and it could really change the space that you're designing. So I'm going to get into a few projects here utilizing the Taurus deck, another LEED Silver certified job at the Corning Museum of Glass. They utilized our decking as the roof structure and architectural ceiling, but also as their wall paneling system too, which is basically a roof turned on its side. And that greatly reduced materials, helping this become LEED certified. Similarly, at the Truist Park Stadium, they utilize our Taurus 4 XL profile. And not only is it long spanning, reducing structural members, there is no roofing on top of this roof deck. It is self-shedding, greatly reducing roofing materials at the Brave Stadium, helping this become LEED Silver certified. Now, this is just one of my favorite projects because it is just a bus station, but at night over in San Antonio, it kind of looks like a UFO. So I love sharing that one. And I love being part of funky designs like this too. But we do work all over the world and all over the United States. We do a ton of work in Hawaii, even though it is very far from Pittsburgh and Florida, but it is very far really from anything. So I could see why they utilize us a lot. But they are very adamant also about utilizing our Skydeck option with these skylights, the Solitube skylights. So for the past 5 years, all the projects that we've been working there have only been specified with our Skydeck option. So they're very adamant about harnessing the natural daylight that their island has to offer. And this is also a beautiful structure spanning from interior to exterior with this space frame system. And we do a ton of library work. We have superior acoustics, clean finished look. As you see, these lights are being hung directly from the metal decking. And this shows you how simple and easy our Anchor system really works. So you never actually have to puncture into the deck to suspend whatever you see fit. And that last piece that just went in is for seismic or horizontal loading, so nothing will ever fall out of your ceiling system. And you could easily suspend everything that you see here on your screen and more. And that same job that had the light hung from it 2 slides before. Okay, another question just came in and it said, did the polished deck come pre-polished and does it have a clear coat on it? Okay. So I'm not sure what you mean about polished decks, but we have a few different finishes. Obviously, you could get the decking bare galvanized G90. So that might be the polished look for that modern industrial look. That's kind of the basic finish that you could get. That's just a bare galvanized finish. And you can't really paint over a bare galvanized deck. We have several other paint finishes, including a primer paint, so you could paint over it in the field, but that is an architectural 2-grade primer paint and is often left as is in an interior space. We also have an Epiclad paint finish for an interior space, which can come in any color that you like. You just send us the paint chip. And then for exterior, we could do a Kynar or an Epishield or a Naticoat, which are Tnemec paint-based finishes. And those also come in any color that you like. So those are the finishes that you get with our decks. Another question was, Patrick, can people get the decks ordered with a pattern on it? You cannot get a pattern on our deck unless it's a wood grain pattern, which I'm going to get into here shortly. We have a Timberlock wood grain finish where our decking can mimic wood, but no other patterns. Like if you wanted like a logo painted on the steel deck, you're gonna have to do that after the fact. We can't do a pattern like that. And getting back into the deck that had the light hung from it, that also spanned from interior to exterior. So you could specify an air dam system here. So whenever the decking exits the building, no air will infiltrate into or out of your building, just bettering the envelope of your building. And we detail all of our jobs. So we cut the decking specifically to all your lengths, and we implement this air dam so it sits over top of the exterior wall, so no air will infiltrate into or out of the building, bettering the envelope of your building. We also have access panels, which I'm going to get into more in depth about 10 slides from now. So if you didn't want to suspend the fire suppression system, you could achieve that while concealing inside of our deck. And we have air dams and access panels for all the different profiles in our Taurus family, but we have this option in each and every other profile that I'm getting into now. So all of our getting out of our dovetail plank ceiling system look into our Invista product line. The Invista up, down, and flat could both be composite and non-composite. But the specular and the FN are strictly used as a non-composite roof that could span a little further distances than 30 feet than our first ones, up to 36 feet with these last two. And we just started manufacturing these two, so we don't have too many projects as of yet with a specular. But this is the biggest one that we've worked on at the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas, which is another LEED Silver certified job. Now, the architect really fell in love with the look of the specular. The structural engineer was super pleased how far it could span. The construction manager was really happy that we SKU cut over 1,600 panels in-house, so they didn't have to do it in the field. And lastly, the AccuStation really pushed for this profile. All of our Envista products have an NRC value of 1 or greater, but the specular has the best absorptive sound properties whenever the sound comes to the deck at an angle than any other deck that we manufacture. And that is exactly what's happening here. And that's exactly why the AccuStation really pushed for this profile too. So we work with you, the architect, and then all your consultants, your construction manager, your structural engineer, your AccuStation, fire system people to get you what you need. And whenever you specify an acoustical deck, we always provide a wind guard system. So whenever the decking is being freighted to the job site or sitting on the job site, none of the acoustical bats will be lost or misplaced. Now, I don't think they'll fly out like a cannon as you see there, but you definitely don't want them to be lost or misconstrued to look like this on your job site as shown. So this is one of the patterns that I was talking about. We can mimic 6 different wood grain finishes, but we can only do that with our Envista flat profiles. So you have the warmth look of the wood, but the structural integrity to clear span up to 36 feet. Now these work well in both interior and exterior spaces. And these are Kynar substrate. So if you're a mile or more away from the coast, we could push through a 20-year warranty with this Kynar substrate wood grain Timberlock paint finish. So we do a ton of work up at UF. Not sure if you have any Gator fans here or not, but their soccer and lacrosse facility utilizes the Timberlock pine in their entryway. This is a perforated deck as well too. So both of them are perforated for acoustics with this Colony maple. This is not perforated. It's not acoustical deck. This is at the Lauderhill Mall Transit Canopy. Exterior application just west of Fort Lauderdale. So we did push through a 20-year warranty with the Kynar paint finish. We do a ton of library work, as I mentioned before. Another library at the North Fort Myers Public Library. So again, I want to reiterate my tenure with Epic. None of the projects that I've worked on have ever been affected by the storms or the hurricanes in Puerto Rico or the state of Florida. And this actually has a pretty far cantilever of 8 feet, really far spans in the corridor. So I was just asked a question about the Timberlock paint, and it says, to be clear, the Timberlock is just a paint and not a laminate. So this is an Italian design, and how it works is you have a base paint and then you oven bake a laminate on top of it, is how that works. So it is part of the paint, and it's a Kynar paint finish. So that's how that is applied. This same job had some inspiration from the West Texas A&M University, but it just had a little bit bigger of spans and cantilevers of up to 10 feet. Typically, everything's bigger in Texas, obviously, but it's a very similar faux wood steel deck with this wood structure. And we do a ton of headquarters, office spaces, a ton of fire departments. And as you see, these little black dots are the sprinkler heads pointing through our access panels. If you can see those concealed access panels, sort of. Another look at Love Field Airport utilized over 1,500 hinged access panels. A closer look of what was concealed inside there. You also have access to the adjacent space too. And this just shows you how simple and easy our hinged access panels really work. So we'll work with you, the architect, your engineers, your fire suppression system people, to really see where those openings are going to go and where these access panels are going to go. And we try to get it specified on the drawings as soon as possible. And then we detail all of our jobs and we send it out for your approval. And we cut all of this in-house. So once the deck is erected, it's your finished product. Now the bottom plate of our Envista profiles don't really have that much structural integrity, so it's all designed consistently. and you won't anger your structure engineer that much. Now, only with our Invista flat profiles can you mimic the 6 wood grain finishes that we have. All of our other profiles can be painted any color you like. They could be painted any color brown that you like too. So if you wanted a kind of a planked wood panel look, you could achieve that. You're just not going to have the grain with any other profile besides our Invista flat. So getting into our wide decking system, these are the longest spanning deck profiles in the world. There's a couple different looks, and both can be acoustical and non-acoustical, but let me talk to you about the SW profiles. They vary in depth from 9 inches, 12 inches, 18 inches, 15 inches, all the way up to 18 inches. That 18-inch deep deck can clear span 58 feet, making it the longest spanning deck profile in the world. And those first 3 super wide decks have a little bit of a different beam appearance to them too. And if you say you want to use the 9, 12, 15, or even 18-inch deep deck section, but you didn't want to add that to the height of your structure, what we could do is we could notch out this bottom piece for you, so it only adds half that to the overall height of your structure. Now here at the Universal Endless Summer Resort, they wanted to mimic a wave. The architect wanted to mimic a wave at the porte cochere and entryway. So they were able to achieve that while utilizing our SW9 profile with about an 8-foot cantilever, 36-foot spans. And we did provide an air dam around the entire perimeter, and it's acoustical on the interior as well. And we did finish paint it for them wave blue. The second phase of the Dr. Phillips Performing Arts Center has all Epic decking on it. So not only on this big canopy, which has a really cool contour to our deck, there's a bunch of acoustical deck on the interior as well. But we'd love to be a part of any funky shape designs that you may be designing, as well as helping you integrate lighting into it as well. But this is also becoming very trendy, these arching beams to columns, wood beam to columns with our deck as more of like a wall paneling system, similar to what you see here at the Wellness Center. I'm not sure why they didn't conceal the fire suppression system inside of a deck. Regardless, it is a very cool structure. And not only do we have the longest spans, we could also achieve the longest cantilevers, up to 18 feet with no extra outriggers or other structural supports. And here at the Queen's University, they were to cantilever this 14 feet to help solar shade all the kids studying for their exams or slacking off on the staircase as shown. I do want to let you know all the profiles that I went through can be designed with air dams as well as access panels, and some of them can even be tapered from a minimum of 8 inches to a maximum of 24. So if you have any radial design, or if you just want a tapered ceiling system look, this would be the perfect panel for you. If you don't like that beamed appearance look, we could plate all of our profiles too. Donna says, Patrick, how much can you cantilever for a balcony, etc.? So in our MSR brochure, we have cantilevers for a composite deck up to 10 feet. So that's kind of what you could do with our MSR that's often used in balconies whenever it's composite. And that's with our MSR profile. I wouldn't go too much further than that, but it is case by case. And it definitely depends on your anchor spans or your back spans of how far you could cantilever a composite deck, as well as a non-composite deck too. So non-composite deck, we could do up to 18 feet. For a composite deck, it's like 10 feet. And those load tables are in our MSR brochure if you're doing like a multi-story residential project or something like that. I'd be glad to help you out with that too. So a couple of tapered jobs, the architect at the Niagara Falls International Airport. Another question I was asked is, do the super wide decks have roofing on top? Every single one of our roof decks has to have roofing on top of our roof decks, every single one. There is no thermal insulation with any of our profiles, so you have to have some type of thermal insulation and then some type of waterproofing on top of all of our roof decks, okay? If there is an exterior canopy that is not in a conditioned space, it's open to air, only with a couple of our profiles, like our Taurus 4, our EDA inverted, and our arch deck, can be designed. If you channel the water instead of pond the water, it does not run in the direction of the slope of the deck, so it sheds the water. Those are the only decks that we promote as not needing a roofing system. And here at the Niagara Falls International Airport, The architect wanted to mimic the river at the falls, so he was able to use natural elements of the wood floor, the stone walls, and they undulated the roof and utilized the tapered decking to mimic the river at the falls. Now, bringing you back to the States, to the state of Florida, down in Sarasota, the Scat Transfer Station, also utilizing our wide deck tapered profile. Now, getting into the last deck profile that I'll be going over, it's the arch deck. It's the only deck that curves in the strong direction. So there's a couple different looks, both can be acoustical. And what's unique about this is that it's only a 3-inch deep deck. But due to the natural structural integrity of the arch, depending on the radius in which it's contoured to and your loads, you could have a clear span of 40 feet with only a 3-inch deep deck profile, which structurally is really cool. Now, typically, whenever you design a bare vaulted roofing system, you run the decking perpendicular to the arch, and then you have a bunch of arching supports with the decking bending in the weak direction over those arches. With the arch deck, there are no intermediate supports, and it spans the arch itself to whichever radius that you desire. And as you see at this 32-foot radius, it could easily support the weight of these 4 construction workers without any temporary shoring or interior supports. Another one at the National Air and Space Museum outside of DC, utilizing a 120-foot radius. This one's pretty cool. The architect came into this existing outdoor space and just utilized their bare galvanized, bold ribbed arch deck. And these channels that are supporting it are also sloped ever so slightly, so whenever the water drains, it drains into each and every other channel. And there's no roofing on top of this one as well. As similar to what you see here, there's no roofing on top of this arch deck too. It is self-shedding. So that's one of our other profiles for an exterior unconditioned space canopy that you could promote with a watertight side lap. But this just shows you a variance of radii that we could achieve. So here's one at 20-foot, 44-foot radius, another one at 70-foot radius. So you just send us the radius and we'll be able to match it and contour it to any radius that you desire in-house. There is a limit on how tight the radius could be, and the tightest radius that we could do is 15 feet. So this is the last section that I'll be going over. It's our indoor pool facilities or natatorium projects that we've worked on. These are all the ones that we've worked on inside this presentation program. We've actually worked on a ton more. Now, an indoor pool facility or a natatorium is a very corrosive environment. This is a cross-section through a built-up Epic deck. Obviously, you need some roofing on top of there. Any roofing works. In any highly moisture content area, we always bag the acoustical baths. And then this is how we apply our Natacoat paint finish so it doesn't rust. First, it's primed. Then we put on the Natacoat, which is an oven-baked polyamide epoxy, another Tnemec paint base finish. And then it's shipped freighted to you and erected, and we recommend a finished epoxy coat. So if anything gets nicked or scratched, this will completely conceal the metal deck. We also have a 20-year exposure rate on all of our profiles. Testing, in less than 2% corrosion has occurred on our decking in the worst case scenario. We also have an ongoing conversation with the first person that has ever utilized it inside of his natatorium, and as of yet, he has not maintained it and no rust has occurred on it, and is erected in 35 years ago in 1989, the year I was born. So all of the profiles that I went through today can be designed with an Natacoat. Here's one with the 5.5. Another one with our wide decking system. We do a ton of work up in Canada and all throughout the United States. There's a YMCA there. This is actually at the JetBlue Orlando Support Center. This is where they do all their test diving for JetBlue. And the architect was very adamant about utilizing the Natacoat paint finish, since one day this may be completely enclosed. And this is the largest aquarium in North America at the Georgia Aquarium Dolphin Exhibit. And they just utilize their Taurus acoustical deck with the Natacoat paint finish. And that finishes my presentation. I kind of want to recap for you really quickly. If you haven't registered onto our website, you should go and do that. All new registrants each month get put into a raffle to win $100. And then each month after that, you should log in to see what's new, because all logins that month get put into a raffle to also win $100. So definitely keep checking out what's new on our website. We have all our catalogs that are all updated as soon as possible in PDF form, plus CAD and Revit families too. Lastly, we implemented a CEU tab. We published an article with AIA about acoustics. If you read the article, complete the 10-question multiple choice quiz within 10 business days, an HSW credit will be logged into your account. So that finishes it, but